This is the Doctors Making a Difference podcast, living with metastatic cancer, highlighting patients, doctors, and researchers who are fighting to win against cancer. We are joined today by Gwen Orilio. Gwen has an interesting story, and maybe some of you, like me, saw her story in the Wall Street Journal. She was featured in that story as a very interesting person who has metastatic lung cancer, and despite having it for over a decade, she has continued on working. In fact, it even highlighted, Gwen, the idea that when you first got this diagnosis, you had said, maybe I'm not even going to worry about entering a retirement account because what's the point? But now a decade later, you're saying, well, I think I'm going to live and let's just keep going. So it's this interesting, fascinating story. And I was so pleased to be able to contact Gwen. But Gwen, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience and telling them a little bit of your story?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a high school math teacher. This is my 21st year teaching high school math here in the schools in Clayton. I live in Garner, North Carolina. I actually grew up in central New York near Syracuse, a small town named Cazenovia. I attended SUNY Geneseo, which is one of the state schools in New York, and I competed on the track team. That's actually where I met my husband. He was also a track runner. I competed in the long jump. We moved to North Carolina right after graduation, and we bought a 4-bedroom house expecting to have a large family. Yeah. And 18 months after my first daughter was born, I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So the cards showed that we would have one child instead of multiple.
A lot of people listening to this are physicians. Some people are like you and me, folks who have to deal with cancer. And so I think a lot of people can maybe relate with that. Maybe just kind of walk us through, like, how was that? Because it's such a change in a course when you are a young person and suddenly you're told, oh, instead of this plan, you get this plan. And you have stage 4 cancer, you hear those words, and it's pretty hard. So I wanted to hear what your experience was with that.
Well, I was experiencing headaches, which is what brought me to the doctor. And so I went and got MRIs. Everything was fine. And then I decided to maybe go to the eye doctor. Maybe I will wear contacts. And so I was like, maybe my prescription's off and I need to get something fixed there. And that's actually where they found my cancer. There was a tumor on the back of my eye. So they told me that I needed to go see a specialist, and many months and tests later, they discovered a tumor in my lung. And at that point, I didn't know much about cancer, to be honest. I didn't know that since it had already spread to my eye, that it was stage 4. And I didn't even know that there was actual stages of cancer. So I've learned a lot, but I don't know, things just changed when they operated on my lung in January of 2015. They cut me open. The doctor came back while I was recovering and said, well, sorry to tell you this, but it is cancer. So I was like, okay, what do we have to do? What's our next step? Like, we're going to fight this thing. I don't know what I have to do, but tell me. And I do remember visiting my oncologist very early on, and I said, so what stage am I? And she said, well, it's already spread to your eye, so you are stage 4. What's next?
Oh, it's kind of wild, especially, I mean, you were a young mother and starting your career and had all these opportunities in front of you, and then it's just stolen at that point. I'm just reflecting on my own experience. It's almost like you don't dare to plan for the next thing, or at least initially that was kind of the first thought, is like, well, let's just sort of finish the last few things and do everything we can and try to set my family in a good direction because I don't know if I'll be here. It's such an overwhelming kind of crazy feeling. And I think anybody that has had a cancer diagnosis, especially if it's already spread outside the bounds of its primary tumor, it's a real heavy duty diagnosis. So what did you do at that point? Obviously, you know, it's a big deal and you discovered it through an eye exam, which is really interesting, unique way to discover it. What did you do next?
Well, I was given the option to freeze my eggs to maybe have more children. And I right away thought about the one child that I did have. And I said, no, I want to attack this right away. It's already spreading. Let's get rid of it. So I opted to have chemo right away before we even tested to see what kind of mutation was driving my cancer. So we started chemo right away. My biopsy went out to test for the EGFR and ALK mutations, which are the largest, the most popular mutations in lung cancer. And I was very fortunate to have an oncologist that was on top of all of the testing and stuff. And she said, "You're young and otherwise healthy. I know you have a mutation. We just have to find which one it is." So the first test came back that I didn't have those mutations. And she said, "All right, well, we're just going to keep digging until we find what mutation, because I'm confident you have something that we'll be able to treat." And she encouraged me to not look at Google. She said, "Those stats are not you. We're going to, like, every patient is different. So we're going to find what's driving this." So I ended up having the ROS1 mutation. Once we discovered the ROS1 mutation, there was one at the time, there was one medicine that I could just take a pill every day. So I continued working through all of it, through my chemo. I was still teaching math full time, and I was coaching track at that time as well. So I was out with the varsity track team coaching the jumpers with no hair.
Yeah, traditional chemotherapy. I mean, I didn't have any hair to start with. I wish I could blame that on my chemotherapy. But yeah, with the chemo, you didn't have the hair. But it sounds like you found, a targetable mutation. You found something that could be targeted by the medications that were available at that time to slow the growth and progression of the tumor, which is great. If we can have more of those targeted things, it certainly imparts a lot of benefits to a person. So have you maintained that type of medication for all these years, or how has it gone over this time?
It's that type, yes, but I'm on my fourth targeted therapy, the TKI. I was on the first one for about 3 years, and the next one was about 6 years. Maybe it was less, 5 years. And then the next one for 1, and then this one I've been on since August of 2022.
Wow.
I'm on my fourth
Yeah.
one, so that's why I need science to just keep finding these mutations, because as you most likely know, the cancer is smart and it figures out a way around the medicine, and you develop a mutation to the mutation. So they've developed these new medicines that will target those new mutations. So this one's been working great.
That's great. Would you say that as time has gone on and you've started different therapies, those therapies, are they being developed in real time? Like when you first started, you said there was just one available, and then these others become available. You have a mutation, or you stop progressing, or you stop making response to the treatment. So then they have to give you another one. And so the science really is kind of keeping pace with what you are doing. You're like riding the front of this wave.
Yes. Yes. My doctor said that when I was diagnosed, she said, "Well, it was a good time to be diagnosed because all of these new treatments are being developed." So I agree that it was a good time. The first medicine stopped working because I progressed into my brain. The medicine that I was currently on, my primary one after the chemo, was not crossing the blood-brain barrier. So I had to switch to a new one. So the doctors here in Raleigh said that after the scans, they said, well, I had more than a dozen. So they stopped counting after 12, I guess, small lesions in my brain. And they said that my option would be to just have whole brain radiation. But at that time, I was, 33, 34. And I had looked into the side effects of the whole brain radiation. I was like, that could turn me into a vegetable at 34. And my daughter was still only 4 years old. So I was like, no, there has to be something else. So that's when I started flying up to Boston. So I guess it was only 2 years after, because I started flying up to Boston in 2017, where they had the ROS1 super docs, they're called. So people that specialized in the type of mutation I had. So I started flying there, and the first flights I was flying, I think, once a month. I had to fly up from Raleigh to Boston. I continued working. I'm glad I have a supportive school.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, not only is that time off and cost of flights, but it's also this huge inconvenience to go back and forth doing that again and again. So do you still fly to Boston, or were you able to get some of that stuff a little bit more locally?
I do. They have been available locally, but Each one I've done in Boston have been part of a clinical
Oh,
trial.
right.
Even when they become commercially available, I'd still choose to stay connected with the doctors up there in Boston. So I still participate. So the drug I'm on now, I entered the phase 1 clinical trial. I
So real
was
early
one
on.
of the first patients.
Well, as a testament to the fact that
Yeah, that
that's
was
working,
good.
you're still going to work. You're still raising your daughter. You're still doing all these things that I'm sure would have defied the odds had you asked any of the folks 10 years ago, will I still be working full time and coaching track and doing all these things and raising my daughter? And nobody would have given you great odds. But here you are 10 years later, and you've been willing to participate in a clinical trial and pave the way for others. It is really a unique story, Gwen, and pretty neat that you have been able to find the right treatment so that you have a treatable mutation. It's just an amazing story, and I love that you can just go to work and do your normal job by day, and then you're like this superhero of the in the cancer world when you're not at work.
Every November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month. So every November, I make my students learn more and more about lung cancer. So I give them a fact of the day. I have about 90 students every November. So I'm trying to educate everyone about how lung cancer is not just a smoker's
Right.
disease, and it deserves more funding.
It does. All cancer research, it's just interesting. My cancer is called solitary fibrous tumor. So it's a rare type of sarcoma nobody's ever heard of. I think every type of cancer just it needs funding, and it needs people, these smart minds, to continue to study it. We need some of our high school students to become researchers and
Right.
do PhDs and ones that go into this and look into it and find it, because we're in an exciting time. If you could call cancer exciting, we're in an exciting time of understanding things at that genetic level. Like you discovered, you found a mutation that was treatable, and then they've found more treatments. And as time has gone on, not only is that interesting from a cancer standpoint, it's life changing, and you're living it. What has that been like as a mother? Like your daughter, she was just little when you had this. It's really all she's ever known is that mom has to fly to Boston every month and go get cancer treatment. That's got to be an interesting thing for you and for her and your whole family to deal with that. What has that been like?
It is very interesting because she is locally part of a support group for kids whose parents have cancer. And a lot of times they ask the kids to share, what was it like when you found out that your mom or your dad had cancer? My daughter doesn't remember. It was when she was 18 months old. She just, okay, every year we go to this lung cancer walk, and mommy has lung cancer. She didn't even know what cancer was at that point. It has been very unique, I think, raising a child where all she's ever known is that I have lung cancer. And now that she is in middle school and actually understanding cancer, she used to be real open about talking about it with like her teachers, making sure her teachers knew, yeah, my mommy's got lung cancer. But now she's like, I don't know if I want to tell them.
I have a 12-year-old also, and it's challenging.
Oh,
You kind of
nice.
go through that, and I just turned 46, so my kids are my older ones are in high school. My oldest is finished high school, and my youngest is 12. And it is interesting to kind of talk to all of them and just say like, well, this is the reality, but we're still going to go on. We're still going to live life and try to just make good choices, because you can't know the future. My wife and I talk about that all the time. Is like, well, I can't just not live. We're just going to live. We're going to go on, and let's not take on some crazy debt that's going to be like a 40-year loan or something. But let's go ahead and just have the activities, go on the adventures, do whatever it is that presents in front of us, so we live fully with all the time that we have, because the amount of time that we have, even before a cancer diagnosis, is unknown. You can't know. Somebody told me that time is the currency we spend without knowing the balance. And it's true. You don't know how much time you have
Yeah.
left, but especially with a cancer diagnosis, a metastatic cancer, you say like, well, I will do the very best I can with what I've got, but I can't know the future. And it'd be handy if we did. But man, Gwen, when I see your story, it just inspires me. Like, okay, look, Gwen's doing it. Gwen, I just think it's pretty cool. Like you figured out a way to just go on, even with the uncertainties of cancer. And I think it's pretty neat. Tell us a little bit about, you made this decision not to really put money into an investment or a retirement account early on, because it seemed like it was a little bit futile if you weren't going to be around long enough to use it. And then I know in that Wall Street Journal article you mentioned that, okay, now I've decided to go ahead and look forward to the future. So how did you go through that transition, that switch?
Well, it's still a decision that I'm not really sure if it was the right one, but it has beneficiaries on it. So if something does happen, the money is still,
Right.
still going to be where it's supposed to be. Since I am a teacher, I do have the state pension. So that was something. I was like, maybe that's enough. But I did decide to open a Roth account over the winter last year. So
I think it's smart.
that's
No, I think it's smart. And I think that it reflects the idea that you're here and you plan to go on. Like none of us can
Mhm.
really know, but the idea that even though the future's uncertain, you've been able to find a holding pattern and just hope that it will keep on keeping on for a long time.
I was just going to say that in 2017, so 2 years after I was surviving with cancer, my husband and I decided to buy a camper and go cross country with our 4-year-old. I don't recommend because it was an 8-week trip in a camper with a 4-year-old.
Wow.
And it was just a travel trailer. So it wasn't even the fun kind where you can like play around while you're driving. So she had to sit in the car seat. But we did go over and made memories for me and my husband. I don't know how much she remembers, but we had talked about it a long time before my diagnosis about getting a camper because my husband grew up camping with his family. And at one point I was like, let's go ahead and do it. Let's just buy the camper, things like that. And we do take trips. Since my husband's also an educator, he's a middle school science teacher. So we have the same schedule. We both have our summers off. So we do try and take summer trips and spring break trips. We went to Universal this last year. We're going on a cruise over Christmas.
And I think even if people don't have cancer, you should just live your life to the fullest. Like, I don't think people should go into tremendous debt to have wild experiences. But if you just save as you go along, man, go have the trips, go have the experiences, do stuff because you just don't know. Like I said, it's time is one of those things we
Right.
don't know how much we have left. You're leaving a legacy for your daughter and also for your students. Like you say, over the course of a decade and hopefully decades to come, you will have had a direct influence on many hundreds, if not thousands, of students, and then that goes on to that ripple effect of that influences them and their families and so many people. And I think everybody, me included, we can think back to people who teachers we had in high school that had a tremendous impact on how we interact with things and see things. And you've done this as a coach for track and field. And those who are on the YouTube video aspect of this can see Gwen Strong on your t-shirt. Tell us about that.
So every year, locally here in Raleigh, the Lung Cancer Initiative puts on a 5K for lung cancer survivors, and it's a fundraiser for them. They support lung cancer researchers and are actually a patient support group. But we put together a team of people to do a 5K. The past few years I've walked it, but at the very beginning I actually used to run the 5K. I can remember some of them that I was the first female survivor to finish the 5K. It's been crazy, that whole experience, to think about other survivors that have to carry around the oxygen tank, or people that had been there the year before that are no longer there because they have passed away. And it's just crazy to be actually running during that event and knowing that I'm well enough to do that.
Your team is called Gwen Strong. Are those primarily made up of people in your family, or do you have some of your students or your high school athletes running it, or who participates in Gwen Strong?
It's usually a lot of my family and close friends. A lot of my coworkers will come out and run with me. But since my school's over in Clayton and this is an event held in Raleigh, I don't get very many of my students to join.
Well, it's a really cool thing you do. I appreciate you sharing this. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, so you've lived this experience for a decade. You've tried to impart this knowledge to students and others in your sphere of influence. You've been willing very kindly to share your story on Wall Street Journal and to, come here as a podcast guest. And again, I told you, I find your story inspirational. I read that. And when you have these moments of uncertainty and doubt, you say, well, I'm not the only one. Look what Gwen is doing. Look at these other people who have figured out a way to live with cancer. What advice would you give to others who are facing a similar diagnosis themselves or to their family members?
Well, every person's different. Every cancer is different. Like my doctor told me, don't look at any statistics, just try and keep a positive mindset and be a self advocate. Sometimes you need to speak up for things that you are feeling or things that are right for you and your family, and just be there for each other. One of the reasons I kept working was because I knew that if I was at home by myself, all I would think about was the cancer diagnosis, and only my mind would take me to bad places. So I knew I had to stay active and keep with my routine and try and carry on like I didn't have cancer, carry on like everything else was normal. It worked for me. I tried to give that advice to my uncle, who was diagnosed in December of last year, and he's not having the same experience. So it really depends on the case, I guess.
Yeah, I like the idea that you just try to live the best you can with what you've got and don't give in to despair, but say, I will do everything I can to keep a positive mental attitude. And then another thing that I think is interesting in your case, Gwen, is a lot of people would say, well, the only things that are available to me are things in my own little immediate area. But you were willing to travel. You've been able to go see whatever needed to be done and try to find wherever the most cutting edge research was, not just for yourself, but for your family and others who count on you. And that's an interesting part of the story, too, to be able to find a way to travel to Boston every single month for years and years and years. That's a tremendous expense. Like you mentioned before we hit record, think about all the trips you might have gone on if all the funds weren't going toward traveling to and staying in Boston every month. But you've gotten to know Boston really well.
Yes, to the point where I'm like, I have to go to Boston again. But I was fortunate enough, they found the tumor in the back of my eye in September of 2014. As you may be aware, open enrollment for healthcare and the extra little benefits like the cancer policies and stuff, you can sign up for those in October. So I was like, well, let me just go ahead and sign up for that cancer one just in case that thing in my eye is a tumor. I had no idea that it was lung cancer. I felt fine. Everything was fine. Like I could breathe fine. I've never smoked a day in my life. So I was like, it can't be lung cancer. Lung cancer was the last thing I thought the tumor in my eye was. But I was like, let me just get this cancer insurance. So the policy I have actually refunds me for my travel, and they'll pay for my companion. So I always bring a friend, or I just brought my brother last time. Went to a Red Sox Yankees game up at Fenway. So
Nice.
that was an experience of a lifetime for sure. I try and make the best of it. But when I was first thinking about going to Boston, I said I would do anything to stay around for my daughter. I think that was a huge motivator, was to make sure I was here for her.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. In that same vein, what advice would you give to others who have children? Like I told you, I have a 12-year-old, you have a 12-year-old, and it's kind of hard to say, like, well, I've got metastatic cancer, because then their immediate questions were, are you going to be okay? And you think, well, I'm sure going to try, but you can't know, like nobody can. What advice or what experiences would you share with others, people who are dealing with that? They've still got kids at home and there's so much uncertainty with cancer. Do you have any advice for other parents who are dealing with a similar situation?
I would just advise you to make memories with the kids. That's the only thing I can think of, because I was saying earlier, my daughter hasn't known anything different. My story is a little bit different. I was diagnosed when she was so young, but just make memories. My daughter has made other friends with kids who have lost parents due to cancer. And I think her friends remember the fun trips they had. Doesn't even have to be a trip. Go to the park all the time, or Saturday morning donuts.
Yeah.
Little things.
Make
like
the
that.
memories, have the experiences. Gwen, you're like this silent hero You have done this stuff. You're not a person to just be full of rage or frustration. You're just so calm about this whole story. And yet your story is heroic. You've been able to live with a challenging disease for a long time. You're raising a daughter in a challenging, uncertain time. You're still coaching and teaching and leaving this impact and this legacy. And you've taught us the importance of having financial preparation, get financial tools like insurance in place early on, have the experience as well you can. Don't lose hope and just don't despair. Keep going even when times are challenging. Don't be afraid to share your story because probably somebody else out there is having something similar. And then to just bravely, quietly go on, even with a challenging disease. Like it may not seem like much when you're living it day by day, but for others who watch that, I'm certain of this in your own circle, and then those who have come across your story through a news article, and I'm certain others who listen through this will derive the same sort of inspiration. This is a person who just quietly goes on and lives life. And I also think if you're entering in phase 1 trials with your folks in Boston, I mean, you're going to be one of their superstars, like someone that shows up and fights the fight. That's why they go to work. That's why they do it, is because of someone like Gwen Orilio that still goes on, and their research and their work has this long-lasting impact that goes out and extrapolates across a lot of different people. So thank you for what you're doing. It's pretty remarkable, actually.
Well, thank you. That was all very nice. I just have complete trust in my doctors. So if they tell me that, hey, this drug looks very promising, I say, okay, let me try it out.
Yeah.
I think I've been on 5 different clinical trials.
Yeah.
4 medicines, and then one was like for trying to find blood samples. They were testing something in my blood. I don't even know what that one was. I was like, sure, sign me up.
The podcast is called Doctors Making a Difference. Most of our episodes are about doctors who are doing just that. And as I've talked to physicians all over the place, the thing that really drives physicians, the thing that really motivates all of us to keep doing what we're doing is the patients. It's the stories of individuals who got this huge benefit from something you did. Because everybody starts off in middle school or high school saying, I want to be a doctor, I want to help people. And then maybe you get a little bit lost along the way because it gets so chaotic and busy, and you get so frustrated with the insurance systems and all the different complexities. But when it really boils down to what kind of impact am I having, it's individuals who benefit from that. So you're one of those. You've been able to do it. So I'm confident your story is somebody listening to this is an aspiring medical student who's going to say, I want to grow up and I want to do cancer research, and I want to be able to help people like Gwen. And maybe one of your students in your school that you've taught, you make them study cancer every November, one of them is going to go on and say, hey, we're going to keep changing this. We're going to change the trajectory for cancer patients so that metastatic cancer is not always a death sentence, but is instead something you can live with, more like a chronic disease rather than something that's going to take your life. What happens to Gwen Orilio next? What comes next for you? Like, you've had all these really impactful, amazing life. You've had a decade of uncertainty, but you've still gone on. What do you see coming next?
Just keep doing the same. I'm hoping to retire in 10 years.
All right.
I'll have 30 years in. I actually only need 9.5 more. That's another thing. Like, I'm really excited about trying to get to retirement, but then I'm like, am I still going to be around? Like every now and then, like when I'm real dark, I don't know. Should I just quit teaching now? or no, I got 9.5 more years. I can do this.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you're doing, Gwen. Like I say, I think it's a tremendously impactful to a lot of people. I appreciate you sharing your story. I encourage folks who want to read about Gwen in the Wall Street Journal to read. If you search up Gwen Orilio on Wall Street Journal, you'll find it.
I'm the only Gwen Orilio here, and I think I'm the only one in the world. So just Google my name.
There you go.
It will pop up.
Yeah, no, it's inspiring, Gwen. Well, and I appreciate you sharing. Any final words or things that you would want to share with our audience as we wrap up here?
The questions you had listed for me, you had asked about a horror story. So I'm just going to, my current worry right now is that the insurance that I am provided by my employer, the state of North Carolina, it's trying to drop the coverage from the hospital that I've been going to for 10 years. I'm worried about what that's going to look like if they actually do drop that and they will become out of network. It will cost me like $18,000 every time I have to go get a scan. That is my big major worry right now. I don't know why they have to be so mean.
Gwen, you've hit on something that's a podcast in and of itself. Why do they have to be so mean is a good question. And I think sometimes on the physician side of it, it can be so frustrating. A person needs X, Y, or Z, or they found a specialist that really is helping with what they've got going. And then suddenly somebody in some place that's far away makes a decision that has a tremendously negative impact. It seems like they hear the stories, but don't really respond. And it seems like we're in a changing insurance landscape where we're a little bit more focused on investors and financial incentives rather than patient outcomes. And I think that's a nationwide push. We all need to push back against that and say, look, insurance is supposed to be about patients, and make sure that we continue to offer patients this excellent healthcare system that we've developed, but we don't want to leave people out just because their insurance system decides to make an arbitrary decision that really has a negative impact. It's a challenge. What have you found to be successful when you've had insurance challenges like that?
Luckily, I haven't had any challenges. We'll see. At the end of October, I'm going to find out if I need to find a new place to get scanned, which I really don't want to do. Like, I just scheduled scans this morning. That's what I did. That was on my to-do list before this call. Since I am a teacher and we have today off from students, I was actually able to get my personal to-do list done. And one of those was to schedule my scans. And all I had to do was call the hospital that I've been going to for 10 and a half years. I called the nuclear med department, asked for my one guy. He's like, I'll take care of you, instead of having to call the call center. And I get 3 scans done at the same time. I want them all scheduled between this time and this time. And they're like, oh, well, we can't do that. But the guy that I've been going to for 10 and a half years, he gets it done. I want to stay with this guy. I want to stay with the people that know me, that have been on this journey with me.
I appreciate that call out. We need to make sure we raise awareness of these issues, because insurance companies, I always tell my patients, it's the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. And unfortunately, in our healthcare system, a lot of those decision makers are not clinicians and not patients. There's a third-party middleman, which is insurance, and we need insurance, and there's a lot of benefits to having medical insurance. But if insurance companies become so profit-driven that they forget to take care of patients, then it's easy to lose sight of what that is actually all about. So, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Any other insights that you thought of, Gwen, that you'd want to share with our audience?
I would say, if you know anyone that's got cancer, reach out to them. They like to be remembered, let's say.
Yeah, remembered. Exactly.
Make memories with them.
Yeah, don't forget. Maybe the other big point, as I've listened to your story, Gwen, is when somebody gets a metastatic cancer diagnosis, don't immediately have your next thought like, oh, well, they're going to die. Because that's not always the case. Keep going with life, because life is precious. Every single breath is precious. And you want to live it to your fullest. And it sounds like that's what you have done. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us, Gwen. It's been inspiring. And I just hope that things go really well for you and your little family. I appreciate you being willing to share kind of on a little bit larger scale the work that you're doing. And I just wish you the very best.
Well, thank you for the invite. I have had a great time.
Yeah, keep in touch, Gwen. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning into the Doctors Making a Difference podcast. And thank you for what you do to help your patients and your community. Your work truly helps so many people. We produce this content to help you have the tools you need to stay in medicine and to highlight the amazing work being done by physicians around the world. Please note that while I am a physician, and many of the guests on this program are also physicians or other professionals, the discussions on this podcast do not represent my employer or any professional organizations to which I belong. This podcast is for your information and entertainment only, and should not be taken as professional advice. You should seek appropriate professional advice pertaining to your own situation. Please check out more of our content on our website, doctorsmakingadifference.com. Also, please follow, like, or subscribe on your podcast player or YouTube channel, and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps to spread the message. Finally, if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, or if you'd like to nominate someone else to be a guest, please visit the website or email admin@doctorsmakingadifference.com. See you next time.